connectivity is everything. We ensure that the links never sleep. Quantities and qualities, all in our data service, providing efficient, reliable voice and data service. We believe if you're not up to speed, then you're going backwards. Communications have to flow as fast as the speed of light. Whatever business you're in, having someone who understands your needs is critical. That is why we just don't offer you technology, we offer you solutions. Enjoy Gamcel's internet broadband anytime, anywhere. Your national operator, Gamcel, Yaibaram.
All right.
Honey, did you remind him that the last time he sent the money, it was not enough to buy all the provisions?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell him.
Are you guys talking about money transfer to buy provisions?
Yes.
But don't you know about Baluwo?
Baluwo? What is Baluwo?
Baluwo is a service that your son can use to send provisions directly to you guys from the shop. And you don't have to worry about the exchange rate.
Tell me how Baluwo works.
It's very simple.
Just log on to baluwo.com and shop, or download the app on your phone. You can shop on the website or using the app to buy online basic products for your family and friends. With Baluwo, you decide what your money is spent on. Your money, your choice. Buy online products for your family and friends in the Gambia, Senegal, Nigeria or Mali. Baluwo, better than sending money.
Are you thinking of owning your dream homes? EJ Investment is here for you. Secure our quality bungalows with 2, 3 or 4 bedrooms, or our story buildings 3 or 4 to 5 bedrooms at very affordable prices with flexible payment plans at our Sanyang Seaview Estate, where you can enjoy the cool breeze with modern infrastructure such as tar roads, covered drainage system, modern electrification with street lights, gated entrance with security posts, and social amenities such as gas station, shopping mall, medical clinic, park, schools, children daycare, and a lot more. Our dedicated team of professionals will keep the estate clean at all times, provide security and patrol team within the estate premises, install latest technologies such as CCTV, Wi-Fi, home network installation, solar panel, and power backup system. Also, check out for our additional home facilities and interior design service such as premium tiling, wall plaster, home landscape, fingerprint home lock, and a lot more. Visit our office at Senegambia Kololi Highway and get a free site visit tour, or contact us on 4464-838. WhatsApp us on 3259.
Council, if you're ready to go, resume. Please, proceed.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we are ready to proceed. The witness is being brought in.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Madam Witness.
So
now, yes, the broadcast, the QTV, are they ready? Obi-Van? Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back, Madam Witness.
Thank you.
So now we should move on to the abuse of the justice sector institutions by the executive. In particular, the use of the Ministry of Justice to help the executive abuse the processes of the courts.
nga xamne dinañ daan dimbele kilifa yoy ci kaw pour ñu dugal seen loxo ci anam yi nga xamne non la attekaay bi daan doxé.
The interferences in the judiciary.
ñi nga xamne ñu daan dugal seen gémmiñ ci lépp loo xamne mooy dox ci wàllu atte bi.
The relationship between the bar and the judiciary.
Jokkoo bi nga xamne moo nekk ci diggante lawyer yi ak attekat yi.
Especially the protests that have been made by members of the bar.
Rawatina nak ñaxtu bi nga xamne lawyer yi defoon nañ ko.
But also to look at this from the experiences that you had in several cases.
Ba léegi tamit ñu seet ko ci yow anam yi nga xamne laal na la ci bunta yu ci bari.
Or in cases that you know about.
Wala boog ay bunta yoo xamne yow sa bopp xam nga ci dara.
But did not necessarily participate in.
Waaye nekkul ne sax yow sa loxo dugg na ci waaye xam nga ci dara.
And just to set the context.
Pour taxawal nak mbir yi.
To examples like, say, for instance, the Ministry of Justice coming up with cases that would not ordinarily pass muster, cases that are do not necessarily establish any prima facie case, let alone have any hope of securing a criminal conviction.
Ci anam yoo xam ne ci bunti attekaay bi amul dara loo xam ne am nañ ko surtout nag mu aju ci li nga xam ne ñoo def wàlli tafaar pour ñu tëj leen.
To put it now in a question form.
Pour ma laaj la nag léegi.
From your experiences.
Ci sa wàlli gis-gis yow.
In which way would you say that the Ministry of Justice was used to secure Yaya Jammeh's wishes by way of using the prosecutorial power that is vested in the DPP?
Ci yow nag sa wàlli gis-gis président Yaya Jammeh ci yan doole la daan sukkandiku pour dugal loxoom ci li nga xam ne mooy bunti àtte gi fii ci biir réew mi.
Well, I know for a fact that in some of these cases, it was obvious from the stage at which the State Council offers opinion on the case that there's no prima facie case to take the matter to court.
Ci ni nga xamé ni nak moy ki prosecutor bi nim koy doxalé mo wéré rek amuton ben éné lu jëm ci mbir mi pour ñu agalé ko ci code.
But yet the cases find themselves in court.
Waaye ba légui rek da nga gis né case yoy dañ dé ag ci court bi.
Those suspects get arrested, detained and charged.
Ñooñu nak dañ leen mujjé japp dal di leen tek ben place tek leen tuuma.
And sometimes taken through a trial.
Légui ñu yobbu leen ci ab atté.
Only to be found not guilty at the end.
Mujjé gi sax dañ gis né loi topatul leen dara loolu lañuy mujjé dogal.
What cases do you have in mind?
Yan façon ngi case mom nga wax ni?
Well, for example, the two cases that I mentioned before.
Comme ci misal rek ñaari case yi nga xamné mom la fi wax ci gannaaw.
In which there was no prima facie case against the accused persons, that is Babu Jangha and Alaji Nying at the court martial.
Mu ngi melni rek Babu Jangha ak Alaji Nying ci court martial bi amu dara lu len top.
So you wonder what the opinion was at the Attorney General's chambers.
Da nga jaxlé nak lan mo doon nak li xelaat bi dox ci Attorney General chambers.
And the justification for actually prosecuting that case.
Ak li wëral nak pour ñu atté len.
In that case, what kind of evidence was presented before the court martial against these two individuals?
Ci kaw lool nak yan façon ngi sédé lañ téwal ci kanami attekay soldat yi pour tek ko ci kaw ñaar ñi.
The only evidence that actually mentions their name.
Finde bi nga xamné rek mo tuddu sen tour fofu.
The only piece of evidence was their confessional statements.
Evidence firnde bi nga xamne mom lañ amon rek moy cadeau yi nga xamne ni ñoom wax nañ ko ne nangu nañ tuuma yi leen tek.
That was the cautionary statements.
Moy nak fiñ tink nak li nga xamne mu ngi jëm ci wali seen tuuma.
Incidentally, the voluntary statements were complete denial of the charges.
Li nga xamne nak moy bunta bu ñak ci tuuma yoy liñ ko bindé mom nak yoy yep wedina li nga xamne mu ngi jëm ci liñ leen tek tuuma.
Those are the statements that they made voluntarily with the charge put to them. They denied the charges.
Tuuma wedinañ nak tuuma yi nga xamne ni mom lañ leen tek.
But when the confession was sought to be tendered, I objected because they didn't comply with the judge's rules. They didn't comply with the procedures that the police should have followed before taking the confessions.
Bi nga xamé né ñu ngi warona tidal nak cadeau yi nga xamné ni mom lañ jëlé ci ñom né nangu nañ liñ leen tek mu né mom la bañon na ndak lolu deppowut ak sarta yi nga xamné ni mom lañu tek ci mbiri atté bobu.
For example, in one of them there was no independent witness.
Ci misal kenn ci ñom amuton kenn ko xamné ni CDF sago mo fa nekkon di independent witness.
When I looked at it, I kind of thought that was their luck.
Bima gisé nak daara bi ci la contane dal lolu xeyna sen chance la.
And for the other one, I believe another omission also, another lapse in the procedure of taking the statement.
I believe
it was the jurat, absence of the jurat. That means that if somebody makes a statement in the local language, if it is recorded, you have to say that it has been read over and they accept it.
The illiteracy protection.
The illiteracy, yeah, exactly.
We
would come to how the judges dealt with that.
Yes.
But you raised the issue of the opinion of the Ministry of Justice. Are you suggesting, therefore, that the AG chambers ought to have known at first brush that there was no case against these individuals?
Well, I'm not suggesting, I'm saying that they ought to, because they're lawyers like myself. But I also know that they had challenges. They had difficulties, shall I say, which former Solicitor General enumerated, I believe, from the perspective of somebody who had been there all his practice. And sometimes, well, we understand that sometimes an opinion is given that there is no case, but yet that would be overruled by the DPP, for example.
And we have seen that example in the Babu Jangha scenario.
There's also Hamadi Sow's case also. That happened also. In fact, in Hamadi Sow's case, they had come to court and on several occasions said that they were going to withdraw the matter, but they never did. About 2 years, I think.
So let's go back.
Yes.
Let's go back to the Babu Jangha case. How was the matter disposed of in view of the defects that you were able to identify on those cautionary statements?
I will take both cases together.
Okay.
For different reasons, during the voir dire, the statements were rejected. Leaving zero evidence against them. We have not even come to the point of prima facie case. Yet the General Court Martial convicted them of concealment of treason, both counts, and sentenced them to 10 years each.
Your mic, lead counsel.
Let's try to understand this. What was the initial charge in these two cases?
They were charged among the big group, but the two were my clients, concealment of treason.
So the initial charge was concealment of treason.
Two counts, yeah.
And they were convicted for concealment of treason. even though there was no admitted evidence against them.
Mo melni dañ leen tuumal yoon daf leen daan ci ne dañ yëgoon li nga xam ne mu ngay xew ci wàlli suufu nguur ba pare waxuñu ko digal nag amuñ yeneeni bunta ci ñoom waaye bunta bi moom ci la leen yoon daan.
No other witness mentioned their name even.
amul beneen seede sax boo xam ne tudd na seen.
That is why I said zero evidence.
moo tax ma ne daal amatuñ benn firnde seen kaw.
I mean, that is a serious travesty of justice. Was the matter appealed?
loolu nag yaa teggi luwaa bu métti la ndax d'appelaat nañ ko.
Yes, we filed appeals.
waaw daldi woon nañu bind nag benn d'appel.
We couldn't get anywhere.
mënuñoo na mujjee fenn.
Because the record of proceedings were required.
ndax li nga xam ne mooy tëddali ni nga xam ne mooy jëm ci wàllu doxali ni code bi sàkku woon nañ ko.
And we couldn't get the clerks to bring it forward.
tey mënuñoo na gis clerk yi pour indi ko.
Counsel, don't ask me one thing after another. And one of my senior counsel in the case once said to me, Neneh, why can't you leave this case? Leave it to drop the appeal.
But that has serious constitutional implications, because here is a person who is being denied justice. The person is being denied access to the courts because you can only access your appeal through the record, and there is no record.
loolu na dafa mel ni yaaxal na nit ki li nga xam ne moo di yellee fam ci wàlli àtte ci yooni dëgg boo xam ne moom lañ ko war a jox ndaxte nit ki doo ko mën a àtte ci yoon te amuloo li nga xam ne moo di record si aju ci wàlli mbiram.
We wrote to the court martial, we did everything we could to have the records, but they were never forthcoming.
bind nañ ci côté soldat yi bind nañ lu ne rek pour rek waaye mujjewu daal sottal.
That is really serious.
I agree entirely.
And the Hamidou Sow case, what was the situation? You said the state promised consistently that they were going to withdraw this case.
Yes.
And 2 years down the line, what happened?
When they didn't, they began prosecution of the matter, called witnesses, and eventually it took many years. In fact, the others had settled for their fate, having been convicted at the court martial and in the other case, and he went on going to court until, I believe, 7 years, 4 months before judgment was delivered. It went through many judges. Suffered enormous delays.
Court yu bari tardé yu bari lu dem ci juroom ñaari at ba mujjé gi dal ñu daldi agalé.
Enormous delays.
7.5 years of pre-trial detention.
In fact,
juroom ñaari at ak dara yo xamné ñu ngi ci mbiram te atté guñ.
In fact, after the conviction, he was convicted, and the sentence was 7 years, 6 months.
He
had done 7 years, 4 months. And he's my Kal, So and Cham. So I said, Hamadi, go lie down for 2 months and you're out. Go drink some So and you're out. The relief on his face that, okay, I'm convicted, but I'm getting out in 2 months.
So the sentence was 7 years, 6 months, and he had already served 7 years,
minus time served, yeah.
Léegi juroom ñaari at ak juroom benn weer lañ ko tëj waaye fekk tëdd na fa ba pare juroom ñaari at ak ñeenti weer.
His trial was the last to finish, but he was the first to be out.
Atem nag mooy bi mujjee waaye nag moo mujj njëkk a génn tamit.
Last in, first out.
Yes. He joked and said to me, at least I was getting out every so often, coming to court for fresh air. But it's not funny, but sometimes you have to make light of such.
The violations that happened during those trials are quite extraordinary. We have heard from a witness who testified that he was told that, well, nothing was going to happen with him there was no case against him, he was going to be released, and the judge made similar pronouncements that, oh, for you, as for you, we have nothing. The judge received a telephone call. The judge stood down, they resumed, and he was sentenced to 25 years in prison.
Miri ya xam luwa gi nag nekkoon na loo xam ne mu ngi doon dox ndax amoon na waajoo xam ne àttekat bi wax na ko ne amul jaral la yoon teg dinañ la bàyyi ñu wéralal ko ko waaye ci ab diir rek àttekat bi dal di dellu si waat ñu dal di ko tëj.
Yes, and I have another similar example. In the case of the GPU, Gambia Press Union executive. Bayemil Toure, in the judgment, Bayemil Toure was convicted, all of them convicted. But in his case, the judge admitted that there was no prima facie case, but said he failed to help the NIA with the investigations. He failed to cooperate.
And that is the basis for conviction of the crime charge?
Yes. He wasn't going to let any of them go free. That was the point. Only one was, I believe that was Saidi Khan. Yes. After the prosecution closed their case, there was no case against him, so he was out. He was the photographer, I believe. But the other members, executive members of the GPO convicted.
We also understood that in the Tamsir Jase case and others, the court admitted the statement of Aliu Job, as evidence after it conceded that it was obtained involuntarily. Would things like this happen in these types of cases?
That particular one hasn't happened with me because I would remind the judge. My experience.
In fact, Amnesty International they have it captured here, and it says Amnesty International had similar concerns during the course of the treason trial when one of the accused, Ali Job, made a statement to the investigation panel during the pre-trial detention, claiming that another defendant, Tamsir Jase, had aided and escorted Nur Cham, prompting Jase's arrest. I would translate this, I will interpret this later. The defense counsel challenged the voluntary nature of Job's statement, claiming that it had been obtained illegally under conditions of torture and therefore was inadmissible as evidence. The court agreed with the defense counsel about the involuntary nature of the statement, but allowed the statement to be considered in court as evidence in violation of fair trial standards. Lim wafi moine ci biñoo atté Tamsir Jase nguur gi dañ dugal wax go xamné Aliou Diop moko waxone ne Tamsir Jase mo dimbalé Ndour Cham génné ko réew mi so lawyer Tamsir Jase bi woné né Aliou Diop day ba mo wax lolu dañ ko mbugal motax mu wax lolu court bi d'accord ak lawyer bi ne waaw lolu mu ngi melni Aliou Diop waxu ko ci ciobareem dañ bañ ko do mbugalé forcé ko ci la wax waye ci ko té lolu taxut code bi d'accord né ñom lolu nga xamné loi daf ko téré ñom dinañ ko jël dugal ko ba paré bolé ko ci djégo yi nga xamné mom lañ wara sét pour atté Tamsir Jase ndax mo def liñ ko tuumal ndax defal liñ ko lolu so te lolu mom yaxalu wala
counsel that was very improper. That was very because the Evidence Act is very clear on that. Confessions had to be proved to be voluntary or to be admitted, otherwise they cannot and should not be admitted.
Of course, the case of your client, Hamadi Sow, is also reported in this article, and it is suggested that State Counsel Mali Woods told the court that they intended to discontinue the case, but it was unclear if the charges were formally dropped. Upon hearing this announcement in the court, Sow's lawyer told his family that he would be released soon. However, Sow was not released from detention approximately until 18 months later.
Well, that probably was towards the end, just before the trial got going. But for about 2 years or about 3 years, they had been saying they were going to withdraw. So it wasn't just Mrs. Wood, it was one state council upon another. And you got the feeling that they were getting instructions to go ahead with this prosecution, even though they didn't believe. I know Mrs. Wood didn't believe in that prosecution. She didn't tell me, but I knew she did not. She had to turn up.
We have received evidence from Solicitor General Tambedu. From Marena. That in a lot of these things, the DPP received direct instructions from the President or through the Attorney General. Or the President. And that the considerations were politics instead of law. Do you have any reason to suggest, to believe that that may not be the case?
No, I don't have any reason. I mean, it could very well have been.
Okay.
Mr. Marena has been in that chambers all his practice.
Mr. Marena
legal practice, so
chambers
I would trust his opinion.
So let's talk about the independence of the judiciary. During the Jammeh era. I know that you have made an interesting distinction between cases in which the executive had an interest and those ordinary cases in which there was no interest. In the 22 years of Jammeh, I know that you have practiced for at least 14 or 15 years. 16 years during his rule. Would you say that there was independence of the judiciary during Jammeh's time?
It was very compromised. And I found that it got, shall I say, worse as the years went by. From my experience, from the beginning, we had very decent members of the bench. With a few exceptions. But as time went on, particularly around the 2006, we were very lucky, I believe, to have certain judges who were within the jurisdiction, as alluded to by my colleagues who had testified before. Sorry.
Okay, amon nañ wërsëg ne by atum 2006 amon nañ fi ay jooj yoo xam ne comme rek ni ko ñi fi wax balaa man niñ ko waxee ñooñu mënoon nañoo def seen liggéey comme niñ ko bëggee.
In the criminal cases that we're talking about.
Ci cases yi ñoo waxtaanee nii.
And I believe they have been mentioned, Neneh and Belgore, and some others. We also had other judges.
Madam Witness, for the purposes of the record, could you state the names again? You said Monaghan.
Honorable Justice Sanjay Monaghan.
Sanjay Monaghan.
And Inkem Isuako, Honorable Justice.
Yes,
Inkem Isuako. And Honorable Justice Ahmed Belgore.
Belgore.
Even Tahir, Tahir also, but.
And Tahir.
We had Kabalata also, not bad, from Zimbabwe or somewhere.
From the testimonies we have received here, it is suggested that these judges who asserted their independence paid a very heavy price for acting so independently in cases in which Jammeh was interested in.
Ci seede yi nga xam ne jot nañ ko fi nag wane nañ ne attekat yi nga xam ne ñoom ñu ngi tànnoon daal pour def seen liggéey ci seen coobare boppa dafa mel ne ñu ngi ko daan def ci ay anam yoo xam ne rek coono la leen doon dikkal ci ay kees yoo xam ne Jammeh amoon na ci itte.
I believe that with the exception of the Commonwealth judges who he couldn't sack because he didn't hire.
ci li nga xam ne nii mooy uteeg ñi nga xam ne ñooy ay Commonwealth judge yi nga xam ne mënul leen a dàq ndax ñoo jëlutoon leen liggéey.
The ones that he could, he fired.
ci ñi nga xam ne mën na leen a dàq daf leen daan dàq.
And I don't think it was necessarily only in criminal cases. There were a few civil cases in which that interest was there, and judges would be,
nekku rek si layo yoo xam ne nii layo yi tefaar la waaye nag si yoo xam ne sax yu civil la.
It was a security of tenure, not really.
Your colleagues who testified seem to have divided this into two interesting categories, like you just suggested: the Commonwealth judges and the judges on technical assistance from Nigeria.
Sa seede yi nga xam ne sa naataango yi nga xam ne joxe nañ fi seen seede ñoom it def nañ ko ñaari xaaj ñi nga xam ne ñooy attekat yi ñoo wax Commonwealth judges ak yeneen ñi nga xam ne yeneen attekat yi lañ.
ñi jógee Nigeria nga xam ne ndimbalab nguuri Nigeria la pour nguuri Gambia. And of course, the third basket would be the local judges. What seems to be clear here, and confirm it for me, if you agree, is that for Commonwealth judges, they would refuse to renew their contracts when the contracts expired.
Pour leeralal ma rek mbir yi mel na ni ñi nga xam ne ñooy Commonwealth judges ñoom dañoo bañ a beesalaat contract yi leen jox bu fekkee ne seen waxtu passé na.
Yes, because my understanding is that it is a request from the Gambia government to the Commonwealth, and that is how the judges come. So if you no longer desire somebody's services, you can say at the end of it that I don't wish to renew. So they had to leave at the end of their tenure.
ci suma gis-gis sàkkuteeg nguuri Gambia la ci kaw loolu nag bu fekkee tamit nag aynatu loolu daal pour ñu jox la ndimbal boobaa rek boromam mun naa noppaleku gannaaw bu seen diir jeexee.
We have heard that this refusal to extend contracts affected Justice Sanjay Monageng, Isuaku, and Chauhan.
dégg nañ ne nag li ñoo bañ pour yokk seen contract yooyu jamono bu mu jeexee laal na ñi nga xam ne ñoom la lim seen tournée.
Yes, and I stand to be corrected if my memory serves me right. Was he not even declared persona non grata? Chauhan.
Chauhan sax mu fekkee ne Fatou ma dafa mel ni dañ ko génne woon.
So he was not pleased.
He was asked to leave the country apparently within a
short
period
48
of time,
hours or something
hours,
like that. Yes.
So that amounts to tantamounts to being declared persona non grata.
That's right.
Yes. We also heard that the Nigerian judges who were on technical assistance from Nigeria were in fact more compliant to the wishes of the executive than the Commonwealth judges who, by reason of the type of contracts they had, asserted more independence.
That is right.
dégg nañ nag ne ñi nga xam ne ñoom la fi waa Nigeria yi ebal ñuy ay attekat yoo xam ne dañ leen indi ci biir réew mi pour ñu dimbale réew mi ñoom ñooy ñi nga xam ne daal ñoo doon gën a ànd ak kilifa yi liñ leen doon sant ñu di ko def ci niñ ko buggee uute nag ak Commonwealth judge yi nga xam ne ñoom contrat ga leen fi indi woon.
That is right, Council, and that is demonstrated.
loolu dëgg la te ndax loolu wane woon nañ ko.
Way they conducted the cases that were assigned to them. These cases.
ci anam gi nga xam ne noonu lañ daan doxalee case yi nga xam ne ni ñoom lañ leen jox.
Causing council a lot of distress and frustration.
daal indi métti ak naxaru lu bari ci biir court bi.
Sorry for putting you on the spot on that, but can you expand on that by giving us examples of instances where you or some of your colleagues you know are affected?
Dañu mëna gëna léralal nak ay misal yo xamné duñu ko mëna jox ci ay anam yo xamné laal na la wala laal na sa ay natango.
I can cite the GPU case.
Mëna woné sax lu jëm ci GPU case su may commencer.
I can give also many examples, but the 2016 protests group, that group.
Yes, please go
4
ahead.
groups. The GPU case,
very GPU bi.
We were being led by Mr. Antuman Gay, Senior Counsel, Mr. Kamara and myself.
Mr. Kamara ak mom ci bopam.
Representing all of them, I believe, except Uncle Sam, yes. Who represented himself.
Uncle Sam.
The matter was initially assigned to Justice Wowo.
Justice Wowo.
We were frustrated with him. From the beginning, you just knew that this is leading to conviction. He would be very intolerant towards counsel. He would overrule every objection. Sometimes without even hearing it till the end. And we even had to walk out. Withdraw representative and walk out of the court. He insisted that all the witnesses were going to give evidence in camera. Despite there were only 3, mind you. There were only 3 witnesses. But only one was listed as an NIA officer who we took first, was the first witness to testify, because they would normally come and say they're NIA officer, they don't want to be identified, and it will be conducted in chambers. And the others were not, and they turned out, it's just tussle between counsel and him. And I remember Mr. Gay getting very, very furious and informed him that we were not, he said, I believe the phrase he used was that I will not represent my clients in a kangaroo court.
Mr. Gay dana daan wax ne daal moom du stede ci court boo xam ne ni daal ci ko di jaay doole la daanaka.
And we walked out. We petitioned the Chief Justice to reassign we asked, I believe he had been asked to recuse himself. Mr. Gay asked him to recuse himself. He threw out and said, our reasons were not valid, were not good enough.
Mr. Gay sax dal na sàkku ne daal fi mu nekk nii dafa waroon a jébale boppam rek ci mbir mi génn ci.
And he would agree with everything the prosecution says.
And disagree
with everything the defense says. Even when it's obvious. So the Chief Justice, I believe, who was then Ajim, I can't remember. I believe it was him. I could be wrong. Reassigned the matter and gave it to Honorable Justice Fagbenle.
Ci kaw loolu nag ki nga xam ne moo nekkoon Chief Justice Ajim mu jégi dal di toxal case boobu santaat ko keneen ku ñu xamee Fagbale.
We didn't realize, counsel, but we went from the frying pan into the fire.
ñun sa yëguñ waaye fañ nekkoon rek moo gën a métti fiñ nekk daanu.
From biased judge to an even more biased judge.
Well, it turned out to be. It turned out. In the way he conducted himself, it was slightly different approach. Whereas Justice Wowo was shouting us down and, openly and visibly hostile.
Justice Wowo nag dafa nekkoon koo xam ne nag moom lim daan def jasrang la ko daan def.
Honorable Justice Fagbele is the opposite.
Why Justice Fagbele nag moom ute na moom tuuti.
And in the end, convicted all of them.
he was more subtle in his approach, but secured the same objective and the same result.
Very well.
In your view, why do you think these judges were more compliant?
I just want to add that he sent all of them to jail for 2 years, including the Sarata Jabi, who was breastfeeding a baby at the time.
Lima ci bëgg yok rek mo nek ne ñom ñep la tej ñaari ati kaso bokk na sax di Sarata Jabi mo xamne bo mu ngi nampal ben xalé bu ndaw.
Did he take consideration of the fact that she was breastfeeding?
Mom ndax bayyi won na xel nak ne Sarata mom mu ngi don nampal.
And that he had to take extraordinary measures because of the baby?
Ña dafa am yeneen jéego yo xamne mom la wara jël ci mbiram di xalé bobu muy nampal.
Yes, he was, because most of the time the baby was in court.
And
when he cries, he has to be given to the mother. Console him. So, and it was after the conviction, it was drawn to his attention. And provisions of the law that said that she should not be sent to jail, because sending her to jail tantamount to sending the child to jail as well.
Did
he change his ruling, his decision on that?
No, that was before sentence, during allocutus. Yeah. Before sentence, all this was drawn to. He could see it.
So after the allocutus, did he take that into account and did not order a custodial sentence in mile 2?
He did not. He sent her equally to jail with the others, 2 years imprisonment. And 2 of them, including Uncle Pap Sen, was not very well at all. So as long as the objective was achieved, nothing else mattered. That was my opinion anyway.
We have also seen that happen to baby Aisha, yep, and her mother, for those who were arrested and detained with regards to the.
They were represented by the flag, yes, also, yeah.
Serious violations. We have learned that these Nigerian judges were in fact called mercenary judges. From your own perspective, why do you think these people were called mercenary judges, and do you think they deserve that accolade?
Well, I believe that it was a term brandished around, and I think it certainly fits some of them.
Why do you say that?
Yes. Yes, because you got the feeling that they were hired to do a job. Which was to secure conviction and imprisonment. In selected cases.
Which kind of cases?
These are the ones that I've mentioned, ones involving political opponents, for example. Journalists, they suffered enormously. And anybody else who may have a different view, or who may be critical to the government, like in the Amadou Skater Jane case. Example.
If you were to mention at least 3 such judges, who would you say they are? If you're not comfortable saying the names, you can write them down.
Yes, I can write them down.
So buge wax nak ñetta ci attekat yo xamne non lañ daan jëfé na di ñu mëna bindal seeni tur fi.
Perhaps it's even better that these names are not mentioned publicly, so that we can compare the evidence of the various counsel who appear before us to see how how often would these names coincide?
baax na sax ne duñ seen tur duñ ko wax jaxaran ndax ñu mun koo méngale ak yeneen lawyer yi nga xam ne ñoom it binda nañ fi ay tur ndax li ngeen binda nuroo na ak ñooñu tamit.
To name a few.
Yes.
But
of course, these judges are quite a few. All right, quite a few. Could I label it compliant judges or mercenary judges? What would you?
I'll leave it to you, counsel.
Thank you. I'll say compliant / mercenary judges.
ndax mun naa leen a tuddee ay jooj yoo xam ne dañ leen daan jàppale wala ñoo xam ne dañ leen di fay pour ñu def seen liggéey.
But of course, these judges would not have been able to do all the bad things that they did without any assistance. Who would you say were enablers of these terrible violations that were committed against those Gambians who had cases in which Yahya Jammeh was interested in? I'll give you back the list, and you could write the names if you have any opinion that certain individuals fell within that category. In particular, those who were administrators of justice.
dëgg la de jooju yi nag ñoom duñ doon mun a def seen liggéey yu bon yi ñu doon def te amut ku leen jàppale ñan nga mun a lim nag ci ñi nga xam ne ñu ngi leen doon jàppale ci jëf yi nga xam ne moom lañ doon def nii dinaa la delloowaat kayit bi nga tànnal ma ci ñooñu.
Yes, well, you hear rumors, but I don't want to. I don't want to speculate. I don't have any personal knowledge.
Danga daan dégg ay waxi ngunu ci biir rek waaye nag bëgguma wax nag yu mel noonu.
Of who interfered with the judges. I don't have.
ñoo daan dugal seen loxo ci mbiri jooji li.
But definitely I know there was interference.
waaye nag xam naa ne daal am na dugal loxo boo xam ne ni nekkoon na.
And sometimes you get the feeling that they were working together with the prosecutors.
léegi sax dangay foy na dañ daan jàppalante ak prosecutor yi.
In order to secure conviction.
pour rek mun a.
But I don't have any personal knowledge to be able to name anybody.
waaye nag ama nag ci xam-xam pour na tudd kenn.
But the interference with the process also extended to harassment of defense lawyers. Have you had any such experience?
li nga xam ne mooy dugal seen loxo ci wàlli atte gi dem na ba ci ñenn ñi nga xam ne ñoo di attekat yi ndax yow am na dara loo xam ne laal na la ci yow.
Amazingly, I count myself lucky. The most I have had is being followed.
déedéet léegi de li ma ci gën a lii rek moo nekk ne daal am naa chance xanaa kañ yenn yi ñu dima stop rek.
Sometimes you'd be driving at certain, and you know when you're being followed.
léegi daal ngay dawal sax xam yëg ne daal ñu ngi la topp.
This happened on occasions.
li am na ci yenn jamono yoo xam ne.
I didn't worry too much about it. I just took precautions and made sure I know where to go and when to go where.
duma daan jaaxal nag waaye danaa daan jël fàggandeku rek pour xam na fan laay dem ak naka laay dem.
Personally, I have not encountered, apart from the hostility as you try to do your job.
su mooy jafe-jafe yi nga xam ne nii moom ngay jànkuwante bu fekkee yaa ngi def sa liggéey.
And the constraints, but personally, I have been fortunate.
ak teqi waaye daal nekk naa koo xam ne ni ku am sens la ne ñu jàpp ma.
How about threats or intimidation?
naka ay tiital wala ay mbugal yoo xam ne ñu ñaa ko doon toppee.
Not directly.
nekkut loo xam ne ñëw na si.
Not directly. Some people will let you know that they know about you and they're watching, but not directly. I don't take notice of threats. So I didn't take them seriously. I just carried on to do my job.
You have done quite a good list of interesting and difficult cases. Perhaps I should just let you comment on some of them, and in particular the Lamin Tunkara Kanyiba Kanyi case. We've talked about the Mariam Dentin case, but some of these other cases that you have done, could you kindly comment on them and talk about some of the rather unusual things that happened in some of those cases?
Okay, just briefly on the Lamin Tunkara one. It demonstrates how bad the situation was. And in a matter in which the state or the former president had interest in, there were very similar things that happened, like disappearances. So it was arrest, detention, disappearance, and I found cover up. I was going to come to that. And cover up. After he was removed from there, they initially said he escaped. You wonder how anyone can escape police custody. And the matter wasn't even investigated.
And for the record, the evidence presented before this commission is that he was released.
Really? Who said that?
We produced the police diary, and the police diary showed that he was released. And the person who did the release testified before this commission, Lamin Cham.
Did he say that he was released?
Yeah.
Did he give the date of the release?
Yes.
Which was?
25th day of March. We even produced the letters that you sent.
After he got bail, I saw him. That was when they said, well, no, we have to wait for the superior officers to come. He certainly wasn't released. And in the end, after they said that he had escaped, I wrote that letter. I believe you have the letter.
Well, we have received evidence from the junglers that he was killed together with the West African migrants.
Yeah.
Wow, ñun am nañ fi sédé yo xamné jongula seen boppa ñom ñi ko ray wax nañ ne dañ ko reyandor ak tukkikat yoy ba.
Well, they may have released him into the hands of the junglers. That's the only explanation.
Dañ ko bayyi ci loxoy jongula ci.
Or the diary was doctored.
Wala diary bi dañ ko yak dal def ci leneen.
He was released and taken by the NIA because, according to his wife, he came to the house with NIA officials and they searched the house.
That was on the first day, I believe.
That was the first day.
That was on the first day.
But, the officer who was in charge of his case, Lamin Cham, said he called him to tell him that he was with the NIA and they have gone to his house. So I am sorry, but yes, these are the terrible things that
I take some of the evidence. I'm sorry to say, some of the evidence of the police with a pinch of salt, I'm afraid.
Yes, but the diary at least clearly showed that they say he was released. So if at all he was released, there should be an explanation as to how he came into the hands of the NIA
again,
and then to the junglers.
Yes.
That is the bit that is lacking in our evidence. That is a gap in our evidence.
Yes.
But we do receive evidence that he was executed.
He was in the vehicle. I heard the evidence of.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So Kanyiba Kanyi?
Kanyiba, sadly, he is still not been produced.
Kanyiba li ci gëna daw yaram dal ba tay génné wuñ ko.
When he was arrested and taken away, my learned senior, Mr. Dabo, initially was, but I was with him in most of the cases that he was handling in the same chambers. That's how I came in to be involved in Kanyuba's case and Usman Rambojata's case. So the court had ordered, Honorable Justice Monaghan had ordered for their production. And they said, we don't have them. That is the first time I heard of that term. And it continued as a trend for the rest of the years. Whenever they could not produce or they didn't want to produce anyone, or release them, they would say, we don't have him. Despite repeated court orders. In fact, one of them I have here by Honorable Justice Monaghan. So I was hoping that the TRRC would bring a witness would come forward and explain what happened to Kanyiba Kanyi. But we haven't been that lucky yet, I understand. But Usman Rambojata, after almost 2 years, a year and a half or so, he was found somewhere by Amnesty International and he was released. Usman Jata Rambo na mujegi ci ñaari attaque dara gis nañ ko fenn. But not after being searched for in every police station. They kept moving him.
Na bo xamé ni ñu ko doon ut ci police station yu bari. Usman Rambo Jata was lucky. At least he is alive.
Yes.
With regards
to Kanyiba, the only information we have is that on a particular date, he was removed from Mile 2 prisons. By state security agents. And he has not been seen since.
That was since 2000. It's since September 2006.
Very September 2006.
We have talked about Bailo and others who were detained incommunicado for over 2 years. You have also talked about the case of Mariam Denton.
I just wanted to make a correction with Mariam Denton's case.
Yes.
She was not prosecuted.
Yes.
Because I think I heard that she was acquitted and discharged. She was not prosecuted. She was released unconditionally.
After 3 months.
Yes, after the 3 months. And then I believe there was, the state wanted her to testify in the treason case on what her client had told her, because I think that was the background. And I remember the lawyers, female lawyers, protesting that this is communication that was privileged between a lawyer and client. That was Tamsir Jase.
How could anyone try to compel a lawyer to testify against a client?
But it was done because she did give the evidence. Well, she testified, let me put it that way.
Wow.
Mind you, that was the very reason why she was arrested. Why would she have been arrested based on what a client had told her? Because when the client was arrested and was being questioned, mentioned that he mentioned to her something like that anyway. But that was privileged.
Indeed. Well, also that was the officially announced or given reason. But
yes.
The commission did receive evidence that from Mr. Harisambu, who was head of NIA at the time, that Jame told him that Mariam is being detained and dealt with in the manner which they did. by reason of the fact that she wanted to be president.
Really?
Yes, that's the evidence before the commission.
Wow.
Which is even worse than the first reason. So you did...
And we saw something similar. I mean, I know you've discussed it with my colleagues, the Moses Richards case, which is very worrying.
Indeed. And from the list of other cases that you have in your statement, it appears that the government had in the law books legislation that enabled them to do some of these crazy prosecutions, witch hunt prosecutions, just to satisfy the wishes of the executive. In your experience, which of these laws would you say they have used to really prosecute people?
Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Let me malapato lol. Gis nañ ci sa statement bi ci cases yi nga wone ne dal amna ci bunti loi yo xamne mom la nguur gi daan sukkandiku pour dugal ñeneen ñi ci yow sax ci sa xel yan loi la nga foog ne mom la gaay daan jëfandikoo pour def yoy.
I think the most abused was false information, giving false information to a public officer.
Bi nga xamne ni mom lañ gënon xëtt nak moy biñ tek ne moy wax nak lo xamne ni du deug.
And here I have two examples.
Te fi na amna fi ñaari firnde.
The case of IGP and Neneh Maketa.
Ci mbiri IGP ak Neneh Maketa.
2011, he was a Daily Observer. Sports editor.
2011,
a journalist.
Daily Observer.
He wrote a petition to the president, I believe, complaining of financial practices at Observer. Daily Observer.
Bindon letter don tawat ni nga xamé dal non lañ doon jëfé copar yi ci Daily Observer.
And he got himself in trouble and charged with giving false information.
Mu dugg ci problème ne dal dafa joxe won bataxel yo xamné ni du deug.
And in the case of Amici, I wasn't going to mention her name, but I have. Sorry. That one is very sad.
Ci Amici waruma na tuddu turam sax way bo mo gënona daw yaram.
She was struggling to meet the expenses towards the education of her twin girls.
Mu ngi doon jéema seen nu muy lijjantee nag fekk njàngi ñaari si xam yi.
They couldn't do the grade 9 exams, the earlier one, because she couldn't afford it.
Mënu yoon def nag grade 9 bi ndax mënutoon koo fay.
So with the help of the school, she went to the school and one of the head teachers wrote a letter for her to the office of the president asking for help.
Loolu nag benn ci teacher yi ci school bi bindaloon ko letter pour mu sàkku ndimbal ci office of the president bi.
As soon as that letter got there,
bi letter bi àggee foofu rek.
She was arrested.
Daldi ko jàppa.
Charged.
ñu daldi ko teg tuuma.
With giving false information.
Dafa doon joxe ay kàddu yoo xam ne du dëgg.
And prosecuted.
ñu daldi ko àtte.
What was the outcome of the case?
Naka la fa xé ko won nak ci layo bobu.
Of course, she was acquitted and discharged.
Mujjé gi sax dañ ko bàyyi woon.
Luckily, because all the witnesses gave evidence that went in her favor.
Ndax sédé yépp demoon nañ ci wax ay kàddu yoo xam ne ni daal moo ko doon dimbale.
It was then I knew that the item was of school fees on the list of expenses was $150.
Ci kaw loolu nag ci lañ gis ne daal liñ lim nag ci mbiri school fees bi téeméer ak juróom fukk la.
But we know that there are a lot of others.
waaye gis nañ ne am na yeneen yu ni mel.
Which she couldn't afford.
yoo xam ne ni mënutoon ko.
That was why she asked for the help.
loolu moo tax moom mu daldi woon bind ndimbal.
But she was prosecuted.
waaye attewoon nañ ko.
Because apparently they said that girls don't pay school fees, something like that.
maanaam sax dafa wax ne daal xale yu jigéen du ñuy fay school fees daal lu mel noonu.
And this was a poor woman.
tey tamit kii jigéen la xam
who was struggling.
doon gannaaw doon jéem a fexe.
This was a very emotional case for me to do.
nekkoon na loo xam ne lu daw yaram.
Even come to court, there was a day when she almost collapsed. Because the thought of the president taking her to court, she was illiterate, was just too much to handle. And so you wonder how this sort of case got to be prosecuted. It was prosecuted by the police.
At which court?
Bundung Magistrates Court. Total abuse of this prosecution of this offense.
It is. Sometimes some of these stories are just simply unbelievable.
Yes. But a good thing came out of it in that I solicited help from one of my friends who had a school, because I said, I thought to myself, if the twin girls still couldn't take that grade 9 exams, then she would have been prosecuted for nothing. So because they were willing, I called them in, they were willing to continue. Edward Cisse, that was Worldsley School, primary school, accepted them, and they passed with flying colors the following year.
Fantastic.
And they went on. So at least that good news came out of the misery that their mother was put through.
Well deserved, for that matter. We do understand that the issue of false information, the lawyers were able to find a loophole in the law. That the law was giving false information to a public servant.
Yes.
And once that loophole was discovered, it was to the displeasure of the president, and something was done to plug that loophole. Could you tell us about it?
Yes, unfortunately for these two, they came after it was plugged. After the loophole was plugged.
Yeah.
And but that is true. I didn't have a case before, but I had the two afterwards.
Okay.
And I could see that because we had to try to find every single hole in the prosecution's case, because we knew that everything else was against us.
And by everything else being against you, you're referring to the prosecutors looking for conviction and not looking to applying the law.
Yes.
And then you have the judges.
Some judges who are very willing to oblige. Yes.
Terrible situation. Okay. And in this particular instance, the law was amended to say
public officer.
Public official.
Official, yeah.
And thereby including all sorts of cases of alleged false information given to President Cham.
Yeah.
Wow.
Many people, particularly civil servants and others who petitioned, landed themselves in court. Being charged.
And what other law was used?
The economic crimes causing financial loss to the government. Yes, to the state.
Economic crimes, the Kasara.
And here I will cite Pasala Jeng's case. Former mayor of Banjul. Frivolous charges. 6 or 7, I think. Abuse of office, neglect of duty, economic crime, the works, for things that weren't even worth it.
And
not returning per diems when in fact the evidence shows that he was the only person who had returned per diems after a trip was cancelled. Things like that, really.
And
it's unnecessary. He was acquitted and discharged by Justice Monachen.
And in your view, what motivated these charges?
I believe it was political.
And
because he was an independent candidate for Banjul, and he won. And as a Banjulian myself, I know that efforts were made to take him over to the ruling party, but he insisted on. So that I know personally, and I'm sure that may have played a part.
But in view of his acquittal, did he maintain his mayorship position?
I
don't think. I think he, in fact, filed a civil suit about his whether it was his purported dismissal. I stand to be corrected. I was not in the case, but I believe maybe Mrs. Sabali had handled that case. There was another case anyway, but his time was wasted because he was going up and down court, and it would have run. The term would have run out.
You also mentioned the Lansana Jobate case. The offense of broadcasting without license.
Yes, that was another, yeah. Yes, broadcasting without license. This was just a ridiculous case against him. A ridiculous case. Which would virtually convict anybody. We all use Skype. Right now we use WhatsApp. I believe the facts of that case were that he attended a political rally. I think he's into communications and etc. And he was streaming, if that is the right word, via Skype what was happening at the rally. And he was charged, arrested, charged, convicted, and sentenced to a fine which he had to pay pending his appeal. He was defended by my senior, Mr. Dabo, but after his troubles, I took over and I did the appeal, and it was overturned, but it was overturned in 2017. Mr. Dabo nak moko jelon waye nak mu jegi ndek ay jafé man ma jël ko ci loxom def d'appel bi
after 8 years.
I can't remember the number of years, but I know that
the original case, the case started. Okay.
The appeal went on for ages. But I'm not sure it's quite 8 years, but it was a few years.
Yes, I made a mistake in my citation of the year.
No, I didn't.
Okay, no, I made the mistake in the citation.
Yeah. It was a few years, because the appeal takes time. I conducted the appeal, and he was acquitted and discharged, but he had already paid the fine, so perhaps we should try to recover that.
Well, that is a case that would make all of us guilty.
All of us guilty.
Of a crime.
All of us guilty. And it's cases like that you cannot not blame the prosecution in helping realize that conviction. Because a lot of these cases should not have made their way to court. But they did, causing enormous strife to the accused persons, and some of them were not granted bail, and they had to serve out. They had to stay in jail until the end of their cases. It was a great deal of injustice.
And there is another law that was used against political opponents. The holding processions without permits.
Yes.
What's your experience dealing with such cases?
Him well. Friend of the family. His appeal came up in court, and I said to him, Uncle Femi, I think I hear that the president is going to pardon you. He was coming from mile 2 to attend the appeal. He said to me, I don't want it. I said, Uncle Boy, it's to go out. And you know, he said, I don't want it. In fact, I will stay in there and complete my sentence. That was how defiant he was. Yes. Yes, and also in the 2016, of course, that one, groups of cases. You had the Solo Sanding group of almost 20 people, similar with the state and the Solo Sanding group was Lamin Sonko and others. Then you had the Hussein Udabo, you had the Motsar, and then you had the other group of protesters, and they were all opposition people. So these are the sort of the cases that definitely lawyers battled with.
How would you describe the relationship between the private bar and the judiciary, especially when it came to some of these cases in which Yahya Jammeh had an interest in?
Lo muna wax nak ci digënté ñi nga xamné ñoy lawyer taxawal seen bop ak ci walli attekat yi surtout nak ci case yi nga xamné Yaya Jammeh mom amna ci ité lool.
In those cases we had confrontation regular with them.
ci yoy nak dañ daan am ay dingatante yu bari.
You had instances when lawyers walked out of court.
Légo-léegi dañ ci am ci jamono boo xam ne lawyer dana gedd court.
Judges parading insults at lawyers.
It
happened in some cases. I remember Honorable Justice Paul and my Fati once had, and also with Mr. Buri Ture.
Justice Paul and Honorable Mai Fati.
A lot of provocation.
What would the General Legal Counsel do with regards to that? Judge and counsel insulting one another.
Léegi nag mbootaay àttekat yi lan lañ dee def ci loolu su fekkee ne lawyer yi ak àttekat yi amoon na ay jàppante yoo xam ne dox na seen diggante.
I think if the matter was brought to the General Legal Counsel, it would have dealt with it. I don't have any personal knowledge, but I do know that as the bar, we, as Mr. Tambadou said yesterday, we had resolved on a few occasions to boycott certain judges.
Comme ni ko Mr. Tambadou waxee woon démb rek léegi am na ñoon niñ ko daan fajee suñu mer rek moo nekkoon ñu gedd nag yenn code yu bari yenn magistrate.
Which judges in particular could you recall?
Yenn judges nga mun a fàttaliku yoo xam ne geddoon.
I remember Honorable Justice Paul's court.
Fàttaliku naa Justice Paul courtam.
Trying to think of another. Sure, there was another one. The lawyers walked out again. We withdrew from these cases, the 2016 cases.
Lawyer they génn na ci code yi ci case yi lu melni ki 2016
for similar reasons as the ones I mentioned in the GPU case many years ago.
Yu melni rek li nga xamne non la fi wone ci case yi GPU ay at yu bari ci gannaaw.
I believe it was Justice Dada who convicted. That was one of the cases.
Justice Dada bokk na ci ñi nga xamne ni ki nga xamne mo tejon nak.
It was made impossible for defense counsel to continue to be in that trial.
Jafe woon na nag pour lawyer yi nga xam ne ñoo leen doon taxawal continuer ci layo boobu.
And they all also didn't participate in that trial, and so paved the way for the judge to do exactly what she wanted.
Tamit nag nekkuñu woon nag di continuer bu ko defee nag may nag judge bi mu bugg def li mu bëggoon a def.
And after all these hurdles, defense lawyers are able to make some good headway. We understand oftentimes the government refused to implement orders that were made against it. What do you say to that?
Yu bari yi yëpp nga xam ne mu ngi doon am léegi-léeg nag ñi nga xam ne ñoo di nguur gi dinañ daan bañ dogal atte yi nga xam ne moom lañ atte loo mun a wax ci loolu.
Refusal to comply with orders.
Oh, that was very frequent.
Loolu nag nekk na loo xam ne ni toujours la.
From the grant of bail.
Bail.
Sometimes even after bail has been granted, they would refuse to. Citing one reason or another. Mainly the police and the NIA, in fact, also, and the prisons.
Give us examples of a case.
I don't want to go back to my senior's case, but there's one there.
And who would that be? Just for the
Mariam Denton.
Mariam Denton.
And which
mostly what they would do is they would stall and eventually release. And the 2016 protesters.
2016 protesters in the ñaxtukat yoyu.
We have heard of Baba Job's case, who had completed his term and still they wouldn't release him.
Dégg nañ fi tam mbiri Baba Job nga xam ne li mu waroon a tëdd yëpp tëdd na ko ba mu jeex waaye taxut ñu bàyyi ko.
Yes, I was not his counsel, but I remember reading in the papers, it was being covered in the papers that his time was up and but he wasn't released.
Nekkuma nag lawyer bi waaye dang naa ci kayiti xibaar yi wo gis naa ne daal waxtu jeexoon na sax waaye bàyyiwuñ ko.
In a few words or phrases, how would you describe Yaya Jammeh's handling of the third arm of the government, of the third arm in the state, the judiciary, how would you describe Yaya Jammeh's separation of powers and his relationship with the judiciary?
Kaddu yu gàtta naka nga mun a wax ne Yaya Jammeh noonu la mel ci anam yi nga xam ne noonu la daan jëflante ak ñetteeli banxaas bi nga xam ne moom la réew mi doon doxee muy bunti àtte bi jokkoo Yaya Jammeh ak ñoom naka la meloon ci sa gis-gis.
He certainly ensured that there was no separation of powers between the executive and the judiciary.
Lim njëkk a gis moo nekk ne daal amul benn wecce wala boog séddoo.
He interfered with the judiciary, with judges.
That's
my belief.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions. Thank you for being so helpful.
Thank you very much, Counsel, and thank you, Madam Cham, for a very brilliant testimony.
Jërëjëf Counsel, jërëjëf Madam Cham ci seede yu am solo yi nga xam ne def nga ko fii nii.
In your last response to Counsel's question, would you say that the judiciary did not have any alternative at all to all the shenanigans that Jammeh was going through? I would have thought that they could do something about it. I wouldn't tell you what they could have done to resist the actions of President Jammeh. But would that be a position that the judiciary didn't have any alternative but to comply?
Ci tontu yi mujj yi nga xam ne moom nga tontu Counsel bi lim la doon laaj li ma la bëgg a laaj mooy ndax ñi nga xam ne ñoo nekk ci wàlli atte bi amuñ woon beneen pexe boo xam ne mënoon nañ koo jël ci président Jammeh lim daan dugal gémmiñam saa yu nekk rek ci atte yi ñoo def ndax amuñ woon benn pexe lu dul rek ànd ak moom ci lim bugga.
I suppose, I can't speak for them, but I do know that for those who were involved, those that he dealt with, they were fine. Those who were doing his bidding. The others, I can say, turned a blind eye. I didn't see any solidarity between them, as long as what I saw was each for themselves. And mostly the Gambian judges were not handling these cases. They went on with what they doing their job with what cases came before them. And while the others carried on doing the bidding. That is one of the things I wanted to speak about in my final statements, that we need to be a collective. We need to be a collective. If you're only going to deal with what affects you, what affects your colleague might affect you tomorrow. So, but basically, I don't know what they would have done, but each was for themselves. And I know that many of the Gambian judges didn't even want these cases coming near them. And were relieved that they were given to non-Gambians. Because they may not be able to resist. They may not have been able to resist. That's just my opinion, because I've spoken to some of them.
Splendid. Hold on to your points. I want to hear a lot from you during your final remarks. Commissioners, if you have any questions, please indicate. Commissioner Kerr, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman.
I should move a bit so that I can communicate with the witness properly. Thank you, Ms. Cham, for your testimony before this commission.
Jërëjëf Mrs. Cham seede yi nga joxe fii ci commission bi.
And for the brilliant work you have done for your clients.
Ak liggéey bu am solo bi nga xam ne taxawu nga ko sa ay client.
My question is regarding the treatment of women.
Li ma la bëgg a laaj nag mooy ni nga xam ne noonu lañ doon jëflante ak jigéen ñi.
How do you think women's issues are generally treated, or were generally treated during the period under view?
Naka nga gisee nag jigéen ñi naka lañ daan jëfalante ci seeni mbir ci jamono ji nga xam ne ni moom la ñoo waxtaanee nii.
Well, I having been in the fight for the promotion and protection of women and children's rights.
ci li nga xam ne noonu laa daan yaxantoo lu aju ci wàlli kaaraange ak jigéen ñi ak xale yi.
I was also the former president of FLAG, Female Lawyers Association.
te it mosoon naa nekk président yi mbootaay jigéen ñi lawyer yi fii ci réew mi.
We worked a lot.
dañ daan def lu bari.
With government, the ministry, the office of the vice president and minister for women's affairs.
ak nguur gi di office vice president bi ak saytu lu jëm ci mbiri jigéen ñi.
That was Dr. Aïssatou Ndiaye Seydi.
mooy Dr. Aïssatou Ndiaye Seydi.
For the promotion and protection of these rights.
lu aju nag ci wàlli siwal ak itamit kaaraange yelleef yi.
So I can say that most of the legal framework
mën naa wax nag lu bari nag ci sata liggéey boobu
had been put in place.
dal dinañ ko teg nag ci yoon.
Such as the Children's Act 2005.
mu ngi mel ni kii ci atum 2005 loi bi ñu teg ci mbiri xale yi.
Women's Act 2010.
ak loi yi bi ñu teg nag ci mbiri jigéen ci atum 2010.
Sexual Offences Act.
ak itamit loi bi nga xam ne moom lañ teg ci
Domestic Violence Act in 2016.
ak ci mbiri fitna yi takkee ci biir kër yi ci atum 2016.
which is a huge step.
nga xam ne nag ay jéego yu rëy lañ.
And then it came to implementation.
ak itamit mujjee gi ñu ñëw doxal ko.
Because you can have beautiful laws, and if you don't implement them, they're of no use to the people.
mun nga am nag ay loi yu wér waaye nag bu fekkee ne doxaluloo ko nag amul benn njëriñ ci nit ñi.
So a lot of sensitization had been done.
ak itamit ay penc état yu bari yoo xam ne def nañ ko.
Particularly on the sexual violence, which repealed the provisions in the criminal code and put all the sexual offences together.
surtout nag ci loi bi nga xam ne ni moom lañ teg ci wàlli sàkkute ci mbiri sëy.
But more needs to be done.
waaye nag lu bari nag war nañ koo defi tamit.
I was very shocked to hear the testimony of some of the witnesses before this commission.
ama naa naqar lool ak mbetteel ci bi nga xamee dégg naa seede yi nga xam ne ni am na fii ci kanam commission bi.
Sexual violations of their rights.
ci loo xam ne ni nag xëtti nañ seen yelleef ci mbiri sëy.
etc.
mooy daanu ci kaw jigéen forcé ko
By
sëy
the
neex na xari.
presidency, allegations, shall I say.
ak itamit ci tuuma yi nga xam ne ni ñu ko teg nag ci buntu présidence.
But the problem we have in this area,
waaye nag fan jafe-jafe bi ñu am si
as
fànn
well as
bi
in domestic violence,
ak itamit sax fitne yi nga xam ne am si kër yi.
is that people hesitate to come forward.
nit ñi dañuy bañ a ñëw di feeñal seen bopp.
That's why I was very, very happy, and I would encourage women to come forward
moo tax ma kontaanoon trop te tamit nag xirtu yi tamit ne pour jigéen ñi ñëw.
when these rights, these human rights that they are violated.
ci jamono bi nga xamee ne seen yelleef yi.
So more work needs to be done, because if the cases don't come to us,
kon nag liggéey bu bari lañ war a def ndax bu fekkee ne mbir yi ñëw ci ñun.
we cannot help.
duñ ci mën a am benn ndimbal bu ci def.
I wonder, I mean, I almost understand why the persons who gave evidence before the commission, I believe Tufa and others, didn't come to us at the time it happened.
jaaxle naa nag ñi nga xam ne ñëw nañ fii teel di fi wax ay seeni sende.
But I understand. I understand.
waaye nag am naa dalin déggin boo xam ne ni.
So implementation of it, enjoyment of the rights.
doxal nag loolu ak jëriñoo ci ba.
We need to begin with awareness raising so that women and society will stop seeing these acts as something that should be hidden under the carpet.
dafay doore rek ci anam gi nga xamee ne mooy noonu la ñu ubbee xeli nit ñi leen pour nag lii duñ ko teg rek ci suuf.
or just hushed up is a family affair. Because many women are suffering in silence. Many children are suffering in silence. And a lot more work needs to be done. But I want to say that they should not be ashamed to come forward. The alleged perpetrators should be ashamed. But a lot has been in terms of other rights, such as equitable ownership of properties and things like that. Since we're talking about human rights, I restrict it to the ones concerned.
Thank you again, once again.
Thank you. Yes, Imam Diallo, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Witness, I would like to first of all congratulate you for all the good work you have done for women, children, and men in this country.
Seede bi man dama la bëgg njëkk ndokkale ci liggéey bu am solo bi nga xam ne defal nga ko jigéen ñi ak gune yi ak góor ñi sax ci biir réew mi fii.
It's a worthy task.
wax la ne góorgóorlu bu baax sas bu rëy la.
I want you to clarify one point for me.
dafa am nag lu ma bëgg nga leeralal ma.
People keep talking about the independence of the three arms of government.
nit ñi daal dañu yàgg di wax ne ñetti banxaas yi nga xam ne moom la réew mi di war a doxee ci ñoo doxee ci seen afiya boppa.
From what we have heard and seen in this commission,
li nga xam ne moom lañ dégg te gis ko fii ci commission bi.
the misuse of power.
ñi nga xam ne nit ki noonu laa jaayee doole ci wàlli palaasam.
From the executive.
ñi ko dalee ba ca kaw.
To the armed forces of the country.
ñi nga xam ne ñoo di soldaar yi ci réew mi.
Do you think that it is ever possible?
ndax foog nga ne nag dina musa am.
To have an independent judiciary.
pour nag ñu amee atte boo xam ne dañ koo def ci seen coobare boppa.
And of what use would that be to the nation?
te loolu lan la mun a defal réew mi.
Thank you.
jërëjëf.
Thank you, Imam, for that question.
jërëjëf Imam ci koy laajte boobu.
I want to say that at least post Jammeh era.
dama bëgg a wax rek ne gannaaw nguuri Jammeh.
We are very confident that we are on the way back to building.
Dal dina ñu am yaakaar ne daal ñu ngi delluwaat ci ni nga xamee daal noonu lañ taxawaaye suñ.
I personally
man ci suma bopp
have not seen anything that should make me worry about the way the judiciary is being run right now.
amuma dara loo xam ne ni jaaxal na ma nag ci anam gi nga xam ne nii bunti attekaay bi noonu lañ koy doxalee ci.
The judges I'm appearing before are conducting themselves the way as honorable as they are.
And
that is trying to maintain their independence. So that the judgments they deliver reflect nothing but their knowledge of the law and guidance by the ethics of their profession. Yes, I can see why Imam is worried from what we came out of. We now have almost 100% Gambian lawyers, judges and magistrates on the bench. And I believe one of my colleagues said it. Being Gambian on the bench is very important. You care about what happens to your people on the country. Because anything you do, you will face people in this country. You will empathize. You will understand the cultures. You work better. And we have seen that already in many judgments that have been delivered.
gis loolu nag ci yenn atte yu bari yoo xam ne
since 2017.
Depuis atum 2017.
And that we can see great deal of independence.
Te tamit nag gis nañ fi bu baax.
And we hope it will continue.
Te yaakaar nañ ni tamit ne dana continuer.
We hope we will never get to a point again
te yaakaar nañ duñ mos a àggati ci
where the executive, the president, or whoever is acting on his behalf
ci ñi nga xam ne ñoo nekk ci nguur gi wala nga xam ne ni kuy dox ci moom.
will pick up the phone just like that.
Dana jël téléphone am rek noonu.
An order for prosecutions and convictions.
Dal di joxe ndigal ci àtte ak tëj.
And imprisonments.
Ak tamit àtte ko ñu tëj ko ci kaso.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jërëjëf.
Does that answer all of it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cham. If you have any concluding remarks, I think you indicated you might, please proceed to make them now.
Yes, I'll just make them briefly. First of all, Mr. Chair, I want to appreciate the Commission.
Mr. Chair, mangi doylo commission bi.
Yourself and your fellow commissioners.
Sa bopp yow ak yeneen kilifa yi nga xam ne ñoo seq pencum commission bi.
My senior lead counsel and his team.
Lead counsel ak kuréelam gi.
And your entire staff.
Ak ñi nga xam ne ñoo fee liggéeyee.
This is the second time I'm coming here and I've been accorded the due respect and been really taken care of.
Bi mooy ñaari yoon maa ngi fee ñëw te tamit dalal nañ ma jox ma cër bi nga xam ne nii yelloo naa ko.
I want to appreciate your sterling work.
Dana doyloo tamit seen liggéey bu rafet bi.
Without this commission,
te bu fekkee ne ci dëddute commission bi.
Most of what we know.
Lu bari nag ci li nga xam ne nii xam nañ ko.
Will not be known.
Duñ ko doon xam ni kon.
Particularly by the ordinary citizens of this country.
Rawatina nag ñi nga xam ne nii ay doomi réew mi rek nekk fii ci réew mi la.
They were only speculations.
Seen gis-gis xalaat rek moo nekkoon.
And people dismissed, such as lawyers like ourselves and victims. Dismissed as opposition or you don't like the government. But much of what we had said and experienced has been shown to be true by these testimonies before this commission. I just want to say that I urge this government to implement every single recommendation that will come out of this commission. Because you are the best in the best position to make recommendations, having heard all the evidence that you have over the past few years. It is the last hope for many victims. And their fear every day is that it is all going to come to naught. Zero. I don't believe that. But I can understand them. So we are relying on this commission to make the appropriate recommendations. We know you will. To ensure that never again Gambians would be put through what we have been. Now, I also want to talk about the way forward a bit. I will not repeat everything that has been said by my colleagues. But I want to buttress the need for nation building. It is not just the government that needs to build the nation. It begins with us, the Gambians, and people living in this country. And we have to think, as I said, Chairman, as a collective, as one body. If everybody's out for their interest and what is good for them alone, we will never build this nation. We need to do it together. We need to do it honestly, sincerely, and we have to have each other's back so that we are happy for our fellow Gambians when they have something new, good, And we are sad for them when they don't.
bu fekkee dañ war a am lu ñaqari tamit bu fekkee ne amuñ ko.
I say that
dama wax loolu
because we had been divided.
ndax dañ ñu xaajale woon.
And I am ashamed to say that some people used to be happy that other people are suffering as victims of Yaya Jammeh.
am na yeneen nit ñoo xam ne sax dañ daan kontaan de ci jamono boo xamee ne am na ñoo xam ñu ngi lool ci loxo Yaya Jammeh.
But we saw that in the end,
waaye nag mujjee gis nañ ci
he had touched everybody.
daal laal na ñëpp.
So we should be very careful.
war nañoo bàyyiwante xel.
And condemn where we need to condemn.
tey tamit ŋàññi nag li nga xam ne loolu la ñu war a ŋàññi.
Regardless of who the offender is.
bàyyi xel sax.
Whether our relative.
moo xam mooy suñu
whether our friend.
moo xam mooy
whether the same tribe.
wala suñu benn xeetu ndoor la.
We should condemn what is wrong.
dañ war a ŋàññi li nga xam ne nii.
No matter who it happens to.
ak nu munti mel ci kan la nekk.
That way.
ci kaw yoon woowu.
When it happens to us.
bu amee ci ñun.
Other people will condemn it.
ñeneen ñi danañ ko ŋàññi.
I heard of a short story by one of Jammeh's former people.
dégg naa benn
former friends or associates or whatever. When he was in mile 2.
jamono bi nga xamee ñu ko téyewoon mile 2.
And he got all his rights violated.
dal di nga xam ne xëtt nañ yelleefam yépp.
And he said to one of my clients.
mu wax na kenn ci suma client.
My client explained it to me that this is what the lawyers meant when they talk about human rights.
lii la lawyer di wax nag lu jëm ci wàllu xëtt ak doomu aadama.
So I leave that. And so we need to build strong institutions.
kon nag dañ war a am nag ay buntu liggéeykaay yu wér.
An institution like National Agency for Legal Aid.
buntu liggéeykaay bu mel ni ki nag fi nga xam ne ni ñooy dimbale nit ñi nga xam ne amuñu joti.
You'll permit me to just say a little bit about this institution.
may ma tuuti rek ma wax lu jëm ci
this institution was set up by the government in 2008.
atum 2008.
Just as a symbol, I think.
dañ ko defoon rek ngir.
Because we had to report outside the Gambia.
ndax dañ war a bind nag report ci bitim réew yi.
on what we have done to bring access to justice to indigent people.
ci li nga xam ne noonu la ñuy indee nag loi ak atte ci nit ñi fii.
But it is not resourced at all.
waaye nag nekkul loo xam ne ni jëriñoon na.
And so it could not benefit adequately those who most needed it, particularly during this time.
waaye nag jëriñutoon ñi nga xam ne nii ñoom ñoo ko yelloon ci jamono jooju.
Because it's subvented by government through the Ministry of Justice.
waaye nag li nga xam ne nguur gi ñoo ci daan dugal seen koppar jaarale ko nag ci ministry bi saytu wàllu àtte bi.
Technically speaking, we're all lawyers, but they are adversaries.
nekk na nag ñun ñëpp ay lawyer lañ waaye nag ñu daan dingatanteeg ñun la.
So how well the legal aid agency does depends on how much money it gets from Ministry of Justice. Who in turn gets from the government. Despite the fact that the Legal Aid Act says that it should have its own independent budget. It still has not. It gets given, I mean, I'm not blaming Ministry of Justice, they get given bulk amount. Because NALA is still sort of under them. And NALA gets given any amount, whether it's enough or not. Some progress has been made in the last year or two. But more needs to be done. Because this institution is the hope for many Gambians who will come will be affected by the law, and they would need representation, and they cannot afford. So it's important that I say that. And also, I want to recognize institutions that have accompanied human rights defenders in this country. Many have, but just to single out a few. Institutions such as Amnesty International. Their call for action did a lot for victims, give hope. Did a lot to put pressure on the government to account for people that they had in their custody. And they did a lot to build lawyers' capacity. A lot of technical assistance by them. And the same goes for ICJ, International Commission of Jurists. The Kenyan section and the Swedish section. I have had the honor of working with them. Very, very difficult and trying times. And they have helped in terms of giving very much needed technical assistance. And I would like to thank everybody else and to encourage my fellow human rights defenders to continue the work, because these are fundamental rights guaranteed by the Constitution, which everybody should enjoy. And to the victims, I say take heart. For the survivors, let's keep hope that for this period, for these violations, we have entrusted our hopes and our dreams on this commission coming out with recommendations that will seek to put right all that was wrong. I thank everybody here. I thank my family and colleagues for all the support over the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Cham, for your testimony again. The concluding remarks are very, very, very good, excellent, and we are going to take careful note of these points that you raised. Our constituent instrument, the TRRC Act 2017 mandates us, among other things, to create a historical record of abuses and violations that occurred in this country for 22 years. In order to prevent and reading the portion of the Act that refers to recommendations and other things, in order to prevent a repeat of the violations and abuses suffered, by making recommendations for the establishment of appropriate preventive mechanisms, including, and I'm putting emphasis on this one, including institutional and legal reforms. We are going to carry out this mandate without any prevarications. And we are determined to see our mantra, never again, taken to its conclusion. We thank you for your wise words and your challenge also to all Gambians. And thank you again for your testimony. We appreciate it very much. Council, you have any procedural matters to raise before we close?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have this document from Ms. Cham, the list of compliant or / mercenary judges. If accepted, it should be Exhibit 215.
The request is granted, Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Commissioner Kerr, you want the floor? Sorry. What's the request now?
Mr. Chair, I have another witness waiting for after lunch.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Thank you very much.
So we're not closing the date at this moment.
I cannot disappoint the Chair.
Bravo. That's great. Thank you again very much. And so we will take a 1-hour lunch break and come back at 3:30. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all very much indeed.
In communication, connectivity is everything. We ensure that the links never sleep. Quantities and qualities, all in our data service, providing efficient, reliable voice and data service. We believe if you're not up to speed, then you're going backwards. Communications have to flow as fast as the speed of light. Whatever business you're in, having someone who understands your needs is critical. That is why we just don't offer you technology, we offer you solutions. Enjoy Gamcel's internet broadband anytime, anywhere. Your national operator, Gamcel, Yaibaram.
All right.
Honey, did you remind him that the last time he sent the money, it was not enough to buy all the provisions?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell him.
Are you guys talking about money transfer to buy provisions?
Yes.
But don't you know about Baluwo?
Baluwo? What is Baluwo?
Baluwo is a service that your son can use to send provisions directly to you guys from the shop. And you don't have to worry about the exchange rate.
Tell me how Baluwo works.
It's very simple.
Just log on to baluwo.com and shop or download the app on your phone.
Gamtel G-Fiber, now you can enjoy super fast internet in gigabytes. G-Fiber is affordable, stable, secured, and accessible to homes, businesses, and enterprises. With Gamtel G-Fiber, the future is speed. Gamtel, creating a brighter future in communication.
For all your pastry, bakery, and quality food, CK Restaurant is the only place to be. We do catering for birthdays, weddings, and all related services. We have all kinds of local foods, American, European, and even beyond. Come and have a taste of our local juice, ebe, and other services. At CK Restaurant, customer satisfaction is our priority.
Love like fire. Wow. Love like fire. Xam ngeen rek affaire bi xam ngeen fan la? Skincare la. 2020 lañ wax de. Waaw. Fii nag mooy Kerr fan Kerr zero tache. Perfect skin. Skincare saa su ne rek niñ ko dee defee rek. Loo lañ soxlaati rek. Maanaam bu dee am problème ci seen skin yéen xam ngeen fan la. Fii ngeen di ñëw. Suma xarit yeeg am di jàmm yi nga xam ne taas daf lañ sonaloon xam nga doon xeesal bel la ka xum éneew ma lañ ko nag waaye just in case comme ni ko gars yi di waxee rek en cas just in case loolu xew xam ngeen fi ngeen di ñëw skincare plus si yu baax rek la ñoo dox nag ay baax rek fu ne la ñoo dem ci réew mi di lañ indi rek nag products yu baax du Paris du Italie du USA du fi mu nekk nii sax boole nañ ci nag Sweden fu nekk lañ leen a indilee products bu dee tamit nag da nga ñuul rek ñu lay jamaa natural beauty that melanin dripping we do have stuff for you as well emuñ si skincare products rek ñu ngi ci cuub yi tamit fu ne la ñoo jaar in fact sax last commercial bi ñu defoon waxuñ leen woon ne dañoo dox ci ay kawar 9A grade rek nag waaw we do have bundles as well hair si lu ne la ñoo dox ñun ñu ngi ci rafetal jigéen rek luy taaral jigéen rek waaw boo leen di tukki tamit bëggoon rek classic suitcase ñu dañoo dox ci ay Samsonite duñ dee indi any brand of suitcases though other than Samsonite comme li ma dee wax rek boo eggee airport dëri Samsonite dafa am nuñ laa xoolee waaw ngeen lan nag waaw skin ci moom la ñu gën a xamee nag skin care products ci moom la ñu gën a xamee ñu ngi dox tamit bentey tamit si ay dàlla waaye man nag skin care mooy suma specialty xam nga rek jigéen bu sa xar kanam réglé loo def mu jag am nañ Patricia Reiner, Kiwi Eye, the whole range, Lighten Up Gold, Tomatine. I mean, the list can just go on and on and on and on. Lépp loo xam ne rek luy taaral jigéen la ci yooyu rek la ñoo dox. Skincare plus nag emuñ si Gambia rek ñu ngi United States ñu ngi Gambia fii ba pare bu dee yaa ngi anywhere in Europe mun nañ la ko mail within 3 days rek ñetti fan rek nga jot say diw emuñ si loolu rek dañ laa consult tamit balaa ñu laa jaay diw dinañ def a free consultation pour wax la rek exactly li nga xam ne moo méngoo ak sa kanam dinañ leen wax tamit ne rek am nañ perfumes, fragrances, men's shirts, accessories. We do dresses as well. We do blouses. I mean, we do shoes. Name it, we do them. Skincare Plus 2020 is our year of perfection. Zero task. Fi mu nekk nii réew mi fii kenn waratu fi task kenn waratu fi am problème kanam kenn waratu fi am problème picture boo ko amee dafa fekk ne rek ñëwuloo ci place bi fii.